The moment you stop begging to be understood, something strange happens. The person who ignored your pain suddenly starts feeling your absence. And their reaction may not be what you expect. They may not chase first. They may go silent, act cold, or pretend they do not care. But beneath that silence, something deeper begins to break open. Because some people only recognize your value when your energy is no longer available to them. Not when you cried, not when you explained, not when you stayed, but when your soul quietly decides, I cannot lose myself anymore. And if this message speaks to something you are living through right now, stay with me until the end, because what happens when you finally leave may reveal the truth they were hiding from you all along. When you stop reaching for someone who became used to your presence, you do something more powerful than arguing. You remove the mirror they were using without realizing it. Your attention, your forgiveness, your repeated attempts to explain your pain, and your willingness to stay all gave them a place to hide from their own behavior. As long as you were there, they could avoid looking at what they were doing. They could say you were too sensitive. They could say you were overthinking. They could convince themselves that nothing was really wrong because you were still present, still answering, still caring, still trying to fix what they kept breaking. But when you begin to withdraw, the whole emotional pattern changes. Suddenly, they are no longer reacting to your words, they are reacting to your absence. And absence has a language that explanations never had. Your silence starts asking questions they cannot escape. Why did this person stop trying? Why do I feel uncomfortable now? Why does the room feel colder without them? Why do I keep checking if they came back? These questions do not come from you anymore. They rise from inside them. This is why your withdrawal becomes their mirror. You are no longer standing in front of them, begging to be seen. You have stepped away, and now they are left with a reflection of how they treated someone who only wanted honesty, care, and emotional respect. That reflection can be disturbing. It can create guilt, fear, regret, or even anger. Some people will not immediately admit they miss you. They may act unaffected. They may become distant. They may even try to blame you for leaving. But beneath that reaction, the deeper truth is beginning to move. Your absence removes their control. It removes the comfort of knowing you will always return. It forces them to experience the emotional emptiness they created. And when someone finally feels the silence they caused, they begin to understand what your presence protected them from. You were not just leaving them, you were taking back the energy they had been using to avoid themselves. Their reaction may surprise you, because it will not always look like love in the beginning. You may expect them to run toward you, apologize, confess everything, or suddenly become soft and vulnerable. But often the first thing that rises in a person when they realize you are leaving is not tenderness. It is shock. It is wounded pride. It is the discomfort of losing control over someone they assumed would always remain emotionally available. This is where many people misunderstand the situation. They think if they really cared, they would immediately show it. But the human ego is rarely that simple. Some people feel deeply, but their first defense is coldness. They act like they do not care, because admitting they care would mean admitting they were affected. And if they admit they were affected, they must also face the possibility that they hurt you, neglected you, or failed to value what was right in front of them. So instead of confessing, they may go silent. Instead of apologizing, they may become distant. Instead of reaching out with honesty, they may act irritated, proud, or indifferent. This is not always because they feel nothing. Sometimes it is because they feel too much and do not know how to meet it without losing the image they build of themselves. When you leave, you disturb the story they told themselves. They believed they had time. They believed you would keep understanding. They believed your love, patience, and forgiveness would continue even if they gave less than you deserved. But your decision to step back breaks that illusion. It tells them without words, I am no longer available for emotional neglect. At first, they may resist this truth. They may test you. They may wait to see if you come back. They may convince themselves that you are just upset and that things will return to normal. But when they realize your silence is not punishment but a decision, the shock begins to deepen. That shock is not yet transformation. Be careful here. Do not confuse their fear of losing you with real change. A surprised reaction is only the first crack in the wall. What matters is what they do after the shock fades. Do they reflect, take responsibility, and come forward with maturity? Or do they only react because access to you is disappearing? Your absence creates emotional pressure because it changes the entire balance between you and them. As long as you were present, forgiving, explaining, waiting, and hoping, they had comfort. Even if they did not treat you properly, they still had access to your energy. They could delay the hard conversation because they knew you were still there. They could avoid responsibility because you kept holding the emotional weight. They could stay confused, careless, or distant because your presence made their behavior feel less urgent. But when you step back, that comfort begins to disappear. The emotional space they once filled with your patience suddenly becomes empty. They may not understand it immediately, but they feel it. They feel the missing message. They feel the silence where your care used to be. They feel the strange discomfort of not knowing whether you still care the same way. And that discomfort becomes pressure. This pressure is not created by manipulation, it is created by reality. You are no longer carrying the bond alone. You are no longer softening the consequences of their actions. You are no longer making excuses for their emotional absence. For the first time, they have to feel what the connection becomes without your constant effort holding it together. That is when the person who seemed calm can become restless. They may check your profile. They may ask others about you. They may suddenly become curious about your life. They may reread old messages or remember moments they dismissed before. Not because you forced them, but because your absence has created a space where their own feelings finally become louder. This is why leaving often affects someone more than arguing ever did. Arguments can be dismissed, tears can be misunderstood, words can be twisted, but absence cannot be negotiated with. It simply stands there, quiet and undeniable. Still, you must be wise. Emotional pressure does not always mean love. Sometimes it means attachment. Sometimes it means fear of losing control. Sometimes it means they miss what you gave, not who you are. So do not rush back just because they feel the pressure. Watch what pressure produces. If it produces honesty, accountability, and real effort, then something may be awakening. But if it produces anger, blame, or games, then the pressure has only revealed what was already inside them. They begin to remember what they took for granted when your absence becomes stronger than your presence ever was. While you were there, your care may have seemed ordinary to them. Your quick replies, your patience, your understanding, your emotional availability, your ability to forgive, your willingness to listen, your habit of making space for them, all of it became part of their normal life. And this is where people become careless. Not always because they are evil, but because the human mind often stops valuing what feels guaranteed. When someone believes you will always be there, they stop noticing the weight of what you give. They forget that patience is not weakness. They forget that loyalty is not something they are entitled to. They forget that love, when neglected for too long, does not always disappear loudly. Sometimes it quietly stands up and walks away. And once you leave, memory starts doing what your words could not do. They may remember the way you supported them when no one else did. They may remember how you understood their moods, their wounds, their silence, their difficult seasons. They may remember how many chances you gave them, how many times you swallowed your pain just to keep peace, how often you tried to understand them even when they made it hard to love them. The strange part is that these memories often return in ordinary moments: a song, a place, a message they cannot send anymore, a quiet evening when they realize nobody checks on them the way you did. A small problem where they instinctively want to tell you, then remember they no longer have that access. That is when your value becomes real to them, not as a theory, but as a loss. But here is the part you need to understand clearly. Missing what you gave is not the same as respecting who you are. Some people miss the comfort, not the person. They miss being loved without being accountable. They miss being forgiven without changing. So when they remember you, do not immediately assume they have awakened. Watch whether their memory turns into maturity. Because real regret does not only say, I miss you, real regret says, I now understand what I failed to protect. Their pride may delay their confession because pride is often the last wall standing between a person and the truth they already feel. They may miss you, they may regret how they treated you, they may feel your absence more deeply than they expected. But admitting it requires humility. And humility is painful for someone who has built their identity around control, distance, or emotional superiority. This is why they may not come forward immediately. They may watch you silently instead. They may check whether you are still affected. They may wait to see if you will break first. They may convince themselves that you will return, because accepting that you are truly leaving would force them to face the damage they helped create. Their pride whispers, do not reach out, do not look weak, do not admit you were wrong, but their heart may be saying something completely different. You have to understand this clearly. Silence does not always mean peace. Sometimes silence is a battlefield. A person can appear calm on the outside while fighting regret, longing, guilt, and fear on the inside. They may type a message and delete it. They may want to explain but not know where to begin. They may fear that if they open the door, you will finally say what they already know, that they had many chances and they wasted them. But pride is dangerous because it can make someone lose the very person they are afraid to lose. Instead of choosing honesty, they choose image. Instead of repairing the bond, they protect their ego. Instead of saying, I hurt you and I understand now, they stay quiet, hoping somehow you will sense what they are too afraid to speak. This is where you must stay strong. Do not mistake hidden feelings for real effort. A person may miss you deeply and still not be ready to meet you properly. A person may love the idea of you returning, but still avoid the responsibility required to rebuild trust. Their pride may delay their confession, but your healing should not be delayed with it. Let them wrestle with what they feel. Let them sit with the silence they created. If their heart is real, it must eventually become braver than their ego. Leaving awakens their fear of final loss, because there is a deep difference between believing someone is upset and realizing someone may actually be gone. As long as they thought you were only hurt, they still felt there was time. They believed your silence would pass. They believed your heart would soften. They believed one small message, one half apology, or one emotional pull would bring you back into the same cycle. But when your energy changes completely, they begin to understand something serious. This may not be another argument. This may be the ending. That realization hits differently. It touches a fear they may have been avoiding for a long time, the fear that they pushed too far, waited too long, and damaged something that cannot easily be repaired. Suddenly, your absence is not just uncomfortable, it becomes threatening to their inner sense of security. They begin to feel that the door they always assumed would stay open is slowly closing. This is often when the emotional awakening begins. They may start replaying moments where they could have chosen better. They may remember your warnings, your quiet sadness, your repeated attempts to explain what was hurting you. They may finally understand that you were not being dramatic. You were giving them chances. You were showing them where the relationship was bleeding. And because they did not listen then, they are forced to feel the weight of it now. But fear of losing you is not always the same as love. Be sharp here. Some people panic when they lose access, not because they are ready to honor you, but because they no longer control the connection. They may rush back with emotion, but emotion alone is cheap. Real love does not only fear losing you, real love learns why it almost lost you. So when they react, do not be blinded by urgency. Watch for depth. Do they only want relief from their fear, or do they truly understand your pain? Do they want you back, or do they want the old comfort back? Final loss can wake someone up, yes, but only accountability proves whether they are truly changed. Your strength changes how they see you, because the moment you choose yourself, you stop playing the role they quietly assign to you. Before, they may have seen you as someone who would always understand, always wait, always forgive, always return. They may have mistaken your patience for weakness. They may have confused your love with dependence. They may have believed that no matter how little they gave, you would still keep showing up with the same open heart. But when you finally stop chasing, something shifts in their mind. You are no longer the person who can be handled with small words, delayed replies, empty promises, or emotional crumbs. You become someone they cannot predict anymore, someone with boundaries, someone who has reached a point where peace matters more than attachment. That change can disturb them deeply because it breaks the old pattern. They suddenly realize you were not staying because you had no options. You were staying because you cared. You were not forgiving because you lacked self-respect. You were forgiving because you still believed something could be healed. But now, your silence tells them that your love had a limit, and that limit was your own destruction. This is where their perception of you begins to transform. The person they once thought would always bend now stands still. The person they thought would keep explaining now chooses quiet dignity. The person they thought would keep accepting pain now protects their own soul. And whether they admit it or not, that kind of strength creates respect. But do not use your strength just to make them notice you. That would still keep you trapped inside their reaction. Your strength is not a performance. It is not a strategy to make someone regret losing you. It is the return of your own inner authority. It is the moment you stop asking, "Will they choose me?" and begin asking, "Why did I keep abandoning myself to be chosen?" When they see you standing without begging, loving without collapsing, and leaving without hatred, they are forced to meet a version of you they never expected. And this version cannot be controlled by guilt, silence, confusion, or emotional games. This version has learned that losing someone is painful, but losing yourself is far more dangerous. Their reaction reveals the truth of the bond, because leaving removes the performance from both sides. When you are still available, it is easy for someone to hide behind vague words, mixed signals, excuses, and half effort. They can say they care while doing very little. They can claim you matter while still treating your pain like an inconvenience. They can keep you close enough to feel secure, but not close enough to honor you properly. But when you step away, the bond is tested in a way words cannot fake. Their reaction begins to show what they were truly attached to. Some people will respond with humility because your absence wakes up genuine love. They will not only miss you, they will reflect. They will ask themselves where they failed. They will feel the pain of losing you, but they will also feel the responsibility of how they contributed to that loss. Others will react with anger, blame, or control. They may accuse you of being cold. They may act like you betrayed them simply because you stopped tolerating confusion. They may try to pull you back with guilt instead of meeting you with honesty. That reaction reveals something important. It shows they were not protecting the connection, they were protecting their access to you. Some people will only miss the comfort you gave them. They will miss your attention, your softness, your forgiveness, and the way you made them feel needed. But missing your energy is not the same as loving your soul. If they only return when they feel empty, but still refuse to understand your pain, then their reaction is not love. It is emotional dependency. This is why you must watch carefully. Do not listen only to the first message. the sudden confession, or the emotional panic. Look at the pattern that follows. Do they become accountable? Do they communicate clearly? Do they respect your boundaries? Do they show consistent change when there is no immediate reward? When you leave, you stop guessing. Their response becomes the answer. It shows whether they loved you, used you, feared losing control, or finally realized your worth. And sometimes the most painful truth is also the most freeing one. The reaction you receive is not meant to confuse you anymore, it is meant to wake you up. In the end, when they realize you are leaving, their reaction may surprise you, because your absence will speak louder than your love ever did. While you were present, they could ignore your pain, delay their responsibility, and take comfort in the belief that you would always stay. But the moment you begin to choose yourself, the illusion breaks. They are forced to feel the space your patience once filled. They are forced to remember the care they treated as ordinary. They are forced to face the silence they helped create. But this is where you must become very honest with yourself. Not every reaction is love. Some people will miss your energy, but not respect your boundaries. Some will fear losing access to you, but still avoid accountability. Some will return only because your absence made them uncomfortable, not because their heart has truly changed. So do not be moved by sudden emotion alone. Watch what follows. Watch whether their words become action. Watch whether their regret becomes maturity. Watch whether their longing becomes respect. Your leaving is not a punishment. It is not revenge. It is not a game to make someone suffer. It is the moment your soul stops negotiating with neglect. It is the moment you understand that love should not require you to abandon yourself just to keep someone close. And if they finally awaken because you walked away, let their awakening be real. Let it come with humility, responsibility, and consistent change. But if they remain proud, confused, or careless, then let your absence become your answer. Because sometimes the greatest transformation begins when you stop asking someone to see your worth and finally decide to see it yourself.